I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the napkin. It was folded neatly, too neatly, placed beside my plate after I got back from the restroom. Everyone else at the table was mid-laugh, pretending like it wasn't there, like it hadn't been just carefully positioned by someone with shaking hands and a guilty conscience. It just said, in tiny, rushed handwriting, "She's going to lie to you. Don't let her drive. Wait for me. That's all." It took me a second to process. My stomach tightened. My palms got damp. I looked at my wife, Callie, sitting across from me, sipping her wine, twirling her hair, laughing too loud at jokes that weren't even funny. She hadn't even noticed I'd come back. Or maybe she had, and just didn't care anymore. Maggie was 2 seats down diagonally. She didn't look at me once. Her eyes were locked on her glass, her jaw tight, like she'd just committed some terrible crime and didn't want to be caught. The rest of the table, 5 of Callie's old college friends, were just carrying on, like none of it mattered, like I didn't exist. And I didn't know what scared me more, the note itself, or the fact that I somehow already believed it. I didn't say anything. I just slid the napkin into my coat pocket, pretending I hadn't seen it, that I wasn't suddenly spiraling into paranoia while trying to remember how many drinks Callie had already had. 3, 4. That's when I noticed her whispering something to Tank, her old friend, the one who once punched a bartender for cutting him off. His eyes darted to me, then back to her. Then they both smirked. I wasn't supposed to see that, but I did. That's when she turned to me, finally acknowledging my presence, and said, "Jesus, Denny, do you have to breathe so loud?" The entire table erupted in laughter. Even the waiter smirked, and I just sat there, trying not to die from the inside out. You have to understand, I'm not the guy people listen to. I'm not dramatic. I'm not confrontational. I don't throw drinks or flip tables. I shrink. I apologize. I get headaches from confrontation. But in that moment, something inside me flipped. Because someone at that table had tried to warn me. Someone had noticed what she was doing. And when Maggie suddenly stood up and said, "Hey, Callie, let's go outside for a minute," I knew this wasn't about wine or air or a cigarette break. Something was about to happen. Something I wasn't meant to hear. Callie hesitated, rolled her eyes, but followed. And I sat there, alone with the rest of them, clutching a napkin like it was a ticking bomb in my pocket. The moment they stepped outside, I started counting seconds. Not because I had any plan, I just needed something to hold on to. Something to ground me while my mind tried to claw its way out of a panic spiral. 12 seconds. 28. 51. That's how far I got before Tank leaned toward me and said with a smirk, "You good, bro? You look like you saw a ghost." I looked up slowly and forced a half smile, the kind people give when they know they're being studied like a rat in a maze. "Just tired," I muttered. My voice came out dry. My throat had gone sandpaper. The others were clearly avoiding eye contact with me. Maybe they knew something. Maybe they didn't. But I swear, there was this heavy silence threading its way through every fake laugh and clink of a glass. One of them, Sarah I think, tried to change the subject to some TV show. Nobody responded. Maggie and Callie were still outside. The napkin in my pocket was burning against my ribs. I started playing back the last few weeks in my head. All the odd silences. The cold shoulders. The random, unexplained late-night errands. The shower running when she came back at 11:30 p.m. from grabbing coffee with Brianna. Who showers after coffee? I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid husband building mountains out of molehills, but my gut had been screaming for a while. And now I had a napkin to prove I hadn't gone completely crazy. Maggie had seen something. Something Callie didn't want me to know. I looked toward the front door of the restaurant. Still no sign of them. 3 minutes passed. 4. Then 5. And just when I thought maybe I should go out there, maybe pretend I was getting some air, the door swung open. Maggie walked back in first. Her face was unreadable, but her jaw was locked tight. She looked directly at me. Not past me. Not through me. At me. And she gave the tiniest shake of her head. Not now. Not yet. Callie came in a second later, smiling wide like nothing had happened. She sat back down, picked up her wine like she hadn't just been missing for 7 minutes, and immediately changed the topic. "So, remember when we got stuck on that lake trip and Dennis forgot the oars?" she said, looking at me like I was a child. "We floated around for like an hour. Everyone thought we were going to die. Classic Denny." They all laughed. Except Maggie. She stared at her untouched drink like it had betrayed her. I don't remember the rest of that dinner. I honestly don't. It became a blur of laughter I wasn't part of, inside jokes I didn't understand, and a wife who seemed more interested in entertaining the table than even acknowledging me. When the check came, Callie didn't even reach for her purse. Just looked at me like it was a given I'd cover everyone again. And I did. Because I always do. Because I was still hoping, somewhere deep down, that maybe this was all in my head. As we walked to the car, I kept checking my phone, hoping Maggie had texted. She hadn't, but I knew she would. Callie slid into the passenger seat like nothing was wrong, humming a song that was playing at the restaurant. I started the car, my hands trembling on the wheel. Before I could even pull out of the parking space, she sighed dramatically and said, "Can we not make tonight about your feelings? Please?" I didn't say anything. Not yet. Because I already knew I wasn't going to sleep that night. And I was right. At 2:42 a.m., my phone lit up. One new message from Maggie. "If you're awake, we need to talk. She's been lying to you for months. And last night, she almost told the truth. Meet me tomorrow. I'll explain everything." I didn't sleep. Not even for a minute. I lay in bed next to Callie, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly like some silent executioner, each rotation slicing into my thoughts. She curled up beside me at some point in the night, her hand grazing my chest like it still belonged there, like nothing had changed. I flinched so slightly she didn't notice. Or maybe she did, and just didn't care. Either way, I stayed frozen, pretending. That's what I've gotten good at, pretending. Pretending I'm not bothered. Pretending I'm not suspicious. Pretending I don't feel like a background character in my own life. And now, pretending I hadn't just received a message from one of her best friends implying there was a whole secret world operating just beneath my nose, and that everyone else had tickets to the show except me. I didn't respond to Maggie's message right away. I just stared at it, reread it a dozen times. I wanted to believe she was exaggerating, that maybe Callie had vented too much one night, or made some flirty comment she regretted. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about a comment. This was deeper, thicker, ugly. At 7:02 a.m., I got out of bed. Quietly, I showered in silence, brushed my teeth like a robot, and poured myself a cup of coffee I didn't even taste. Callie came downstairs 20 minutes later, hair tied up, looking at her phone, no makeup on. She gave me a half glance and said, "I don't know why you're being weird. Are you mad because I told the lake story?" I almost laughed. That's the part she thought I cared about. I wanted to scream, "You embarrassed me for 2 hours straight, ignored me, let your friends laugh at me like I was a broken joke in a thrift store bin, and then disappeared outside with Maggie for 7 minutes while I sat there pretending not to drown." But instead, I just said, "I'm fine." She nodded like she believed me, then added, "I'm going to meet the girls later. We're planning Maggie's birthday." Maggie's birthday? That was rich. The woman who had slipped me a warning napkin like a spy in a Cold War thriller was now about to go sip lattes and play party planner with the same woman she was supposedly trying to protect me from. I said nothing, because I still didn't know who was lying. Or worse, who was telling the whole truth. At 9:11 a.m., I finally messaged Maggie back. I kept it simple. "Where?" She replied almost instantly, like she'd been waiting with the phone in her hand. "There's a bakery off Main and Holden. 2 o'clock. Come alone. Please." I spent the next few hours pretending to work, sending empty emails, staring blankly at spreadsheets, trying to act normal enough so Callie wouldn't suspect anything. At one point, I caught her watching me from the hallway. Not lovingly. Not curiously. No, it was that calculated kind of glance, like she was trying to decide if I was catching on, like she could feel the shift. At 1:35 p.m., I told her I had an IT meeting at the office, the easiest excuse in the world for someone in my job. She didn't ask questions, just nodded, told me to grab milk on the way home, and returned to whatever she was reading on her tablet. I stood there for a few extra seconds, watching her, and wondering how many lies she'd said while sitting in that exact spot. When I got to the bakery, Maggie was already there. Back corner. Hoodie. Hair in a bun. She didn't wave. Just made eye contact, then looked down at her coffee. I walked over, sat across from her, and before I could say a word, she said, "Before you hate me, you need to understand I tried to stop it." I didn't speak. I just nodded once, forcing myself to breathe normally even though every part of me felt like it was being peeled apart one layer at a time. She looked around the room, then leaned in closer. I told her not to do it. I told her it wasn't fair, that you didn't deserve it. But she said it didn't matter anymore. She said you'd gotten used to being walked on. My mouth went dry. Do what? Maggie closed her eyes like she was about to dive underwater. She's been meeting someone. Not a stranger. Not a random guy off Tinder or whatever. Her voice caught. She looked back down at her cup. It's Tank. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. Maggie's voice was calm, but the sentence didn't fit the air around us. Like it had broken into the conversation from another reality. One where my life was already crumbling and just waiting for me to catch up. I sat there, motionless, as her words echoed in my head like thunder inside a cathedral. Tank. It was Tank. The loudest guy at the table. The guy who ordered top-shelf whiskey before the appetizers even landed. The guy who kept calling Callie cowgirl like they were still in college, and it was all just one big party. The guy who once fake punched me in the ribs so hard I saw stars, and then laughed when I stumbled. That guy. I blinked at Maggie, trying to push the thought out of my brain like it was something gross on a windshield. You're saying they're sleeping together? She shook her head slowly, but not to deny it. She was building up to something worse. It's more than that, she said, her eyes beginning to water. It's not just physical. It started a while ago, last year, probably. I don't know the exact moment. But I started noticing them texting late at night. Jokes no one else understood. They'd share glances in rooms when they thought no one noticed. And then there was the ski trip in February. You remember how she said you couldn't go because it was girls only? I did. I remembered how disappointed I'd been. How I'd booked time off work just in case and canceled it after she told me they were going. Spa weekend, she'd said. No boys allowed. Not even you. I'd felt oddly proud of myself for not being possessive, for trusting her, like I was some enlightened, modern husband. Tank was there, Maggie said, confirming it without even needing to say the words. He showed up the second night. They shared a room. The rest of us didn't even know until it was already happening. My stomach turned. A cold pressure formed behind my ears, like all the blood was being sucked from my skull. I wasn't angry yet. Anger hadn't arrived. It was something worse. Something slower. That hollow, drifting feeling when you realize the boat you're on has a hole, and you've been sinking for miles without noticing. Maggie continued, her voice quieter now. I told her to end it. I told her you didn't deserve this. That whatever issues you two had, this wasn't how you fixed them. But she said you'd never leave. That you were too scared to be alone. That you needed her more than she needed you. Her words, not mine. I should have stood up. Walked away. Flipped the table. Something. But I couldn't. I was stuck. Nailed to the seat by the weight of years of quiet humiliation I'd let slide because I thought that's what love looked like. I'd been defending her, even in private, for so long. Telling myself she was just stressed. That I was being too sensitive. That she'd come back around. How long have you known? I asked finally, my voice shaking. Maggie looked ashamed. Since March. I confronted her. We had a huge fight. She told me to stay out of her life, or she'd cut me off completely. We didn't talk for a month. I only came to the dinner because she guilt me into it. But when I saw how she treated you last night, something snapped. I couldn't sit there and stay quiet anymore. I rubbed my hands over my face, trying to process. Trying not to let the tears come in public. I wasn't the kind of guy who cried in coffee shops. But I was also no longer the kind of guy who pretended everything was fine. Why the napkin? I asked. Maggie hesitated. Because I was scared she'd see me texting you. She was watching me all night. I couldn't risk it. I had to warn you somehow. I nodded slowly. It all made a kind of horrifying sense now. Every cold stare, every snide remark, every time she seemed annoyed just by my presence. It wasn't frustration. It wasn't a rough patch. It was contempt. And contempt only grows when it has an audience. I stood up, slowly, feeling like my limbs were made of wet concrete. Thank you, I said, voice hoarse. Maggie grabbed my wrist gently. There's something else, she said. And I swear to you, I didn't want to be the one to tell you this. I looked at her, waiting, dreading. She's not done. She's planning something. And if I were you, I'd check your name on the house title before the weekend. It took me until I got back to my car to realize I'd been holding my breath the entire time I stood at that table. The air outside the bakery was too cold for mid-May, and yet I was sweating through my shirt. My hands wouldn't stop shaking on the steering wheel. I didn't turn the key right away. I just sat there, staring out the windshield at nothing, Maggie's warning echoing like a drumbeat in my chest. She's planning something. I kept replaying the phrase over and over again. The kind of vague horror that sits in your gut like lead. Anyone can cheat. People do awful things in the heat of selfishness or lust. But this wasn't impulsive. This was structured, planned, which meant it had moving parts. Documents, timing, leverage. Check your name on the house title. I opened the county assessor's website right there in the car. Typed in the address we'd shared for 4 years. The house we picked together. The one we said we'd raise a family in, even though that conversation had quietly died sometime around the 2nd year of our marriage. And when the property page loaded, it was like being kicked in the chest. Only one name on the deed. Hers. I blinked. Refreshed the page. Still hers. I checked the filing history. The title had been transferred to her name 11 months ago. I sat back hard, letting out a noise I didn't even recognize as mine. I thought we'd bought the house together. I remembered signing documents. But she worked in marketing. She always handled the paperwork. She told me which line to sign, which page to initial, like I was some distracted child being guided across a sidewalk. She'd pulled me out of the ownership without telling me, months ago, and I hadn't noticed. I wanted to throw up. The thing is, she didn't need to tell me what she was doing, because in that moment, I finally understood what Maggie had meant. Callie wasn't just cheating on me with Tank. She wasn't just humiliating me at dinners and rolling her eyes in front of our friends. She was clearing the board, positioning the fall, moving the chess pieces behind my back so that when the game ended, I'd be left staring at an empty table and a single-word text that read, "Goodbye." I finally started the car and drove home like a zombie. Every house I passed looked safer than mine. I pulled into the driveway and just sat there again, staring at the front door like it was the mouth of a cave. I didn't want to go inside. I didn't want to pretend to be her husband. I didn't want to see her curled up on the couch watching trashy reality TV, like she didn't just take the roof out from under my feet and hand it to someone else. But I went inside anyway. She was in the kitchen, casually pouring wine, at 2:47 p.m., mind you, and talking on speakerphone. I caught the tail end of it as I walked in. Yeah, well, I'm just waiting until we finalize the paperwork, and then he's free to be someone else's problem. My heart stopped. She saw me and hung up like it was nothing. Smiled. Hey babe, grab milk? I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table, the wine glass, the whole damn kitchen. But I didn't. Not yet. Because I suddenly realized something terrifying. I was still playing catch-up. She was ahead of me. She'd been playing this game with a rule book I never got to read. And if I exploded now, if I revealed what I knew, I'd just become the angry, unstable guy she could point to later when filing papers. She'd say I lost it, that she tried to protect me. She'd weaponize my rage and call it a reason. So I smiled, said, yeah, got the milk, set the bag down, kissed her on the cheek. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. If she was playing a game, fine. Now it was my turn to play one too. The thing about pretending is that it doesn't take long before you start forgetting which version of yourself is real. For days after Maggie's warning and the house title discovery, I walked through the world like a badly written actor in a show I never auditioned for. I smiled at Callie like nothing was wrong. I told her I'd fixed the leaky sink. I complimented her dinner. Even though it was takeout, she reheated in the microwave and called homemade. I even laughed at a meme she showed me, the one she probably also sent to Tank. Every time I touched her shoulder, every time I said, I love you, I felt like I was scrubbing acid into my own skin. But I kept playing, because she thought I was blind. And the only thing more dangerous than someone who's blind is someone who's finally pretending to be. The first thing I did was visit a lawyer. A quiet, dull office in the back of a business park, the kind of place that handles divorces without fanfare or broken windows. The lawyer's name was Gary, and he wore glasses that made his eyes look 3 sizes too big. I liked him immediately. He didn't ask if I was sure. He didn't pretend to be shocked. He just looked at the documentation I brought in, the house title, some bank statements, a blurry screenshot of Callie's call history, and said, "You're late to the party." But not too late. It turns out, while she had removed me from the deed, she hadn't touched the joint savings. That was a mistake. Gary told me I could legally withdraw half and freeze the account under marital asset protection before any separation proceedings began. She'll find out, I said. He just nodded. She will, but not until it's already done. And that's how I found myself standing in line at the bank 2 days later, holding a check made out to myself for $42,860. 52. I didn't even look at it when they handed it over. I just folded it slowly, slipped it into my jacket, and walked out like a ghost. I felt nothing. No rush. No fear. Just an eerie calm, the kind that usually comes before something explodes. At home, things were getting stranger. Colder. Callie spent more time in the office downstairs with the door closed. I heard her on the phone one night, speaking in that low, sugar-coated voice she used when she was trying to manipulate people. No, I'll make sure it's filed this week. He's still clueless. I think he suspects something, but he hasn't done anything. We're fine. She said we. The sickest part? She didn't even try to hide it anymore. I think she liked the power. The thrill of having me under her thumb while she whispered secrets 2 doors away. I was the joke again, the quiet husband who wouldn't dare stand up or ask questions. But I had already made my next move. And my next after that. I made copies of everything. Emails, screenshots, photos. I printed them, kept them off my devices. I gave one set to Gary. Another I sealed in a waterproof envelope and duct taped to the underside of my desk at work. If she tried to nuke me legally, if she tried to paint me as unstable or abusive, I had receipts. Boring, bulletproof, ugly truth. And then came the final piece, the security camera. It was tiny, unnoticeable. I installed it in the hallway near the entry door, tucked between a wooden beam and the smoke detector. Callie never noticed. Why would she? She didn't think I was capable of anything clever. I was just the guy who sorted our recycling and cried during Pixar movies. But 2 nights later, the camera caught what I needed. Tank. At our door. Let in with a kiss. They didn't even make it upstairs. The hallway. The wall. Her hand on his belt. His mouth on her neck. The video was short. Grainy. Enough to ruin a man. Enough to end something permanently. I sent it to a secure cloud folder that Gary could access. And that night, when she came to bed humming and scrolling through Instagram, I kissed her on the forehead. I almost smiled. Because she didn't know. But I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was setting traps. And she had already stepped in one. There's a moment in every plan where something slips. A thread phrase. A variable doesn't follow orders. You can do everything right. Documents in place. Videos saved. Money secured. And still feel the entire structure tremble underneath your feet. That moment came for me on a Thursday afternoon, for days after the hallway footage. Callie said she had a branding consultation across town and needed the car. She asked like it was already hers, and technically, legally, it was. I said yes, handed over the keys, and kissed her like it didn't poison me. I watched her walk out the door in heels she hadn't worn in months. Not for me, anyway. Then I waited. Exactly 17 minutes later, I left too, through the side garage, keys to my old hatchback in hand. The car she forgot I still had. It hadn't been driven in almost a year, but it ran. I followed from a distance, careful, deliberate. I didn't tail her like in the movies, hugging corners and ducking behind vans. I knew the route she'd take, knew where she'd turn. I didn't need to see the final destination. But I did. It wasn't an office building. It wasn't a cafe. It was a motel. A motel. Not a hotel. Not a conference center. A highway side, 2-star motel with faded signage and a cracked parking lot and hourly rates that told the truth before anyone else could. I parked 3 blocks away and walked back on foot, hood up, pretending to be just another guy with nowhere to be. I watched her walk inside alone. I didn't go in, because I didn't need more proof. I already had what I needed. The rest would only break something inside me that hadn't cracked yet, something I might need to keep if I ever wanted to be whole again. So I turned around. But what I didn't expect was her to follow me. I was halfway home when I noticed the call. Maggie. Missed call. Then a text. Where are you? She just asked me if I'd seen you. She's freaking out. She thinks you know. Of course she thinks I know. Because she knows what she would do if the roles were reversed. She knows she'd burn everything to the ground if someone humiliated her in public and then stole her life out from under her. She knows I'm not angry. I'm quiet. And quiet men terrify her because they watch. They wait. They build. But I had made a mistake. Not a tactical one. Not a legal one. An emotional one. I'd let myself start enjoying the power shift. I started imagining her face when the lawyer handed her the envelope. When she realized the account was drained. When she found out she was being recorded. I pictured it in too much detail, rewound it like a movie trailer. And while I was busy fantasizing about justice, I forgot one simple truth. People like Callie don't surrender. They pivot. They twist. They invent new versions of the truth. When I walked into the house, she was sitting at the table. Not angry, not smug, crying. Real tears. The kind that make you pause, even when you know better. I stood in the doorway like an idiot, coat half off, watching my cheating wife cry like someone just ran over her childhood dog. She looked up at me, mascara smudged, voice hoarse. "I think we need to talk." That's all she said. And just like that, the lines blurred. Because part of me still remembered our early mornings. Her asleep on my shoulder. The way she used to whisper, "Don't die before me," whenever I had a fever. The playlist she made when my dad passed. I remembered the woman I married. And the problem is, when betrayal wears a familiar face, it confuses you. It makes you wonder if the pain is just a phase. If maybe, you could fix it. Glue it back together with shared memories and silent forgiveness. But I wasn't ready for her next line. "I know what you're doing," she said softly. "And I don't blame you." My blood ran cold. "I know about the account. The camera. Maggie. All of it," she whispered. "But it's not what you think. I didn't plan to hurt you. I just fell out. And you stopped noticing." She leaned forward. "But if you want me gone, if you're done, I need to tell you something first. Something you don't know yet." She paused. And then she said it. 2 words. So soft. So final. "I'm pregnant." I didn't move for a long time after she said it. That word, pregnant, landed like a wrecking ball in the middle of a room already scorched and torn apart. But somehow, it didn't destroy me the way I expected it to. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I finally felt everything. All at once. Months of confusion. Years of humiliation. Every shrug, every sigh, every moment I told myself to be smaller just to keep her comfortable. It all surfaced like a tide I could no longer hold back. I sat down across from her, looked her in the eyes, and for the first time in our marriage, I said what I was afraid to admit even to myself. "I stopped noticing because you stopped seeing me." Long before this. She didn't argue. She didn't cry harder. She just nodded. "I'm not going to yell," I said. "I'm not going to fight you. But I'm not going to play the fool anymore either." I asked her directly, "Is it mine?" She looked at me, and to my surprise, and maybe hers too, she said, "I don't know." That was the moment I expected the rage to finally boil over. But it didn't. There was something freeing about hearing the truth, even when it hurts. When a lie ends, clarity begins. I stood up. Quiet. Calm. "I'll be filing in the morning," I said. "I'm not out for revenge. I'm not here to ruin your life. But I'm taking mine back." She didn't beg. She didn't protest. She just stared down at her wine glass, trembling slightly, like a prisoner waiting for a verdict she already knew was coming. I packed that night. Not all of it, just what mattered. A duffel bag. My hard drive. A stack of printed documents. One photo from the hallway. Us on a ski trip before everything broke. I took it to remind myself, some things aren't meant to be fixed. They're meant to be understood. And then left behind. Maggie helped me find a short-term rental. Just a little studio with terrible water pressure and a view of a brick wall. But it was mine. And for the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I didn't wake up with dread in my chest. I didn't fall asleep wondering what version of her I'd meet tomorrow. I just existed, simply, quietly, fully. Weeks passed. The paperwork went through. She didn't contest. Gary said it was one of the cleanest escapes he'd seen all year. I kept half the savings. She kept the house. I didn't want it anymore. I didn't want anything that came with ghosts. As for the pregnancy, she never brought it up again. And I didn't ask. That chapter wasn't mine to write. What surprised me most, though, was what came next. Not bitterness. Not regret. But peace. Real peace. I started going on walks again. Joined a small local trivia group. I even reconnected with my brother, the one I'd drifted from after college. And maybe the most unexpected part? I started seeing someone. No rush. No pressure. Just coffee with someone who asked how my day was without checking her phone. Who laughed at my bad jokes like they mattered. Who reminded me, slowly, that being seen isn't a luxury. It's a right. It took me 38 years to understand that the quietest revenge isn't vengeance. It's rebuilding. It's healing in silence while they watch from a distance. It's choosing to be whole when they expected you to stay broken. So yeah, I lost a wife. But I found myself. And that was the best ending I never saw coming.